We live in an age of accelerating disruption. Every company is facing profound uncertainty on a global scale. Leaders must be courageous, empathetic, adaptable, and cultivate a mindset for social good. AWS is celebrating 10 years of reInvent and 15 years of helping our customers transform the world. Customers like PGA Tour's First Tee Foundation, VTEX, and Amazon Prime Video and Studios, and innovation investors like the Operator Collective. Each of these companies has been able to thrive through uncertain times, driving transformation with bold leadership, a clear vision, and global economic impact. For over 25 years, First Tee has used golf to teach lessons about life. With a proven values-based curriculum, they help kids become great teenagers and self-reliant adults. It's not just a game, it's game-changing. Latin America is among our fastest-growing geographies over the past 10 years. VTEX was founded in Brazil and is now helping companies worldwide serve retail customers in new ways. VTEX is also a founding sponsor of Tetrix, the biggest challenge in the world for college students. Operator Collective is changing the face of venture capital by bringing together a diverse community of business and technology leaders with the mission of transforming enterprise investing across the global startup ecosystem. Amazon Prime Video and Studios is innovating in new ways to create and curate video content that reflects audiences all over the world, representing the intersection of what the company cares about and what the audience cares about. How can shaping a better future for our customers and communities help our companies thrive in a world of uncertainty? Ask yourselves. Ask your teams. I guarantee the answer will surprise you.
Please welcome Vice President Technology, AWS, Francesca Vasquez.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our 10th annual AWS reInvent. I don't think I can hear you. Welcome to our 10th annual AWS reInvent. I am so excited to be here with you today, to be here in person. We've made it, and also for all of you that are out on the live stream. This is a celebration, and in fact, I heard we had a special guest last night with Tina Turner at Midnight Madness. But this is a celebration. We're celebrating 10 years of reInvent and 15 years of helping our customers and our partners transform their business leveraging AWS. Thanks. We've had over 15 years of lessons learned, and we know that constant reinvention requires a key focus in order for you to be able to have long-term sustainable business growth. It is no surprise or no secret that over the past 20 months, they've been marked with uncertainty, fear, and a lot of change, and leaders such as ourselves have had to reimagine the new normal. And that new normal is giving us hope and optimism for the future. Now, figuring out the how, it's essential for us, it's essential for our partners, and COVID-19 and our global response to social, economic, environmental, and technological challenges is changing how businesses operate. It's changing what leadership looks like now. It's also changing what we value and what's expected of us as leaders. Leaders are having to mobilize and adapt new strategies. for being able to lead through crisis and recovery, innovate responsibly, and foster and promote cultures of inclusion, equity, diversity for the global workforce in the digital economy. I am so excited to host our first AWS leadership session with 4 amazing leaders who've been able to lead their organizations in the current and post-pandemic era fueled by resilience, grit, courage. These leaders are amazing at global scale. So with that, I'd like for all of you to welcome to the stage Malin Yin, Geraldo Tomas, Ukanwa Ojo, and Greg McLaughlin. Please give them a great round of applause. Welcome, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Great.
Welcome to reInvent 2021. We're here. They can't hear you.
No.
So we have a lot to cover. So I'd like to go ahead and jump in and let's go. It's no surprise that the last 20 months, everyone, has just been marked by so much uncertainty. And we've learned a lot. Greg, we're so happy to have you join us today. For those of you that do not know Greg, Greg's the CEO of the First Tee, and he's been an active member of the greater golf community for more than 30 years. You also served as the CEO of the Tiger Woods Foundation for 14 years. Any golfers in the audience or on the live stream? Okay, so we want to know, Greg, before we kick off, have you ever played Tiger Woods before and beat him?
I have played golf with Tiger maybe about a dozen times or so. And so Francesca said earlier, she goes, have you ever beat him? And I'm like, no, I haven't ever beat him, actually. He's very competitive, but he used to always have a great line. You know, most of these guys, they all have to play for money. You know, they need the adrenaline rush. So I'm like, okay, what are we playing for? And he says, whatever makes you nervous. So, I have not beat him though, Francesca. No, I haven't.
Okay, we'll put that on our commitment goal list maybe one day.
Right.
So, well, you're no stranger to leadership, Greg. We're happy to have you here. One of the things I've been quite surprised about is the pandemic has popularized, you know, very unexpected activities. And I know for myself and many of you probably out there, golf has been one of those sort of great surprises that we've been able to do in general with our mental well-being throughout this time. Can you tell us a little bit about the First Tee? What inspired it? What's the First Tee?
So our program is celebrating its 25th year, really, and it's mainly focused, it's a youth development program. We currently have 150 chapters, mostly nationwide, 6 international, but we're in 11,000 schools and about another 1,400 youth-serving organizations, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs. And the real focus of the program really is helping kids through the challenges basically that they're going on, you know, really through life. And this last year and even into this year is obviously put a lot of pressure on young people today, both, you know, socially, emotionally, academically. And our program really is designed to help kids, you know, focus on taking risk, character development. You know, one of the things that a lot of people really don't realize that you're not born with character, right? You know, you develop it over time. Francesca is nice enough to sit on our board of governors, and Arthur Blank, you know, founded Home Depot, is one of our longtime supporters and board members. You know, and he made a comment to me one time. He said, you know, people talk about that the First Tee teaches kids, you know, soft skills, those, you know, responsibility, respect, discipline, again, taking risk, setting goals. He said, but, you know, those are hard skills. And he said, you won't be successful in business, in life, or certainly academically unless you understand a lot of those hard skills. So that's a focus of ours. And then in addition to that, you know, we have a college scholarship program, which is need and merit based to really help kids throughout their time when they're matriculating. So we're happy to have you as one of our newest board members, Francesca. So thank you for serving.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We have, we're live streaming, and we hope to touch over 500,000 individuals globally, by the way. Can you talk about just the community, your international presence, and how do you see community really evolving over the next few years as leaders?
So our 150 chapters has about 1,400 program locations. We're in every state. We're in 6 countries internationally. And that ecosystem basically represents about 20,000 people, whether they're staff members, mentors, coaches, volunteers, board members, and it's a key. And having that connection in those communities, and then we have 11,000 schools that we're in that then will feed to our individual chapters, equally as well. But I think community is really the cornerstone. I mean, all our responsibility, mainly at headquarters, is to support the chapter network. And that's the focus of ours, is to try and elevate and make the individual experiences for these young people. So throughout our now 25 years, we've reached over 15 million young people, about somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million kids on an annual basis. And the focus age group goes anywhere from probably 8 to 18, with the main focus really being in that 10 to 14 years of age. So we're trying to catch them as they're effectively going into high school, which is the first life-changing experience for most young people today.
Yeah, thanks for that. You spoke about community, and I also heard the word mentorship. And I think in these times we're hearing from more leaders and employees and organizations about the importance of mentorship. Malin, I'd like to move to you. You're no stranger to community, to mentoring, and to development. You just happen to do that in the venture capital space and have an opportunity to work with hundreds of startups and enterprises all across the world. Can you just talk a little bit about what inspired you for Operator Collective? I'm not sure if the audience is familiar, but venture is pretty important during this time right now. Startups and enterprises have gone through quite a bit of transformation. What inspired you?
So I have a very unusual background for having started a venture fund. I actually started out my career as an intellectual property attorney focused on patents. And I think actually being an outsider actually helped me start Operator Collective, which is a venture fund in structure, but we really dismantled the venture model from the ground up and rebuilt it to optimize for operators. So even though I was an intellectual property attorney, I actually have been a part of starting and scaling up 4 organizations. All have had a very strong community aspect of it. So one of these was a venture-backed startup that we took from 0 to 100 million in public in less than 3 years. But I was such an outsider to venture, I actually didn't realize there was anything unusual about that. And so even though I helped launch the company, I actually didn't start there until 18 months in. And so when I joined, I was employee 65. And this is back in 2010. And so when I joined the company, there was not as much awareness back then about diversity and how little diversity there is, especially in the venture world. And so when I joined as employee 65, the company had all white male founders and all white male investors, all really great, smart people. But then, as happens when you go to build your network, when you hire employees, you tend to hire people who are like you, right? And so the company was mostly white and mostly male, and then me, who came in, who is not. And so it was a wake-up call because there was some adaptation there. But what I realized is that even at just 65 employees, it's incredibly hard to start diversifying, right? Much less when you're at 500 or 5,000. So I knew that if we could address some of these companies from the ground up, that we could start earlier. And then so the second thing that this experience led me to, which is that, because I was an outsider to ventures, I was always observing from the outside and saw that the venture world really revolves around VCs and founders. And those are largely white, largely male. And 2 very important parts of the ecosystem. Obviously, there's no startups without VCs and founders. But the operators, people who have built and scaled up companies, were largely not part of this ecosystem. I spent most of my life as an enterprise operator, and that's where I mostly identify. And so what I realized is that But the VCs and founders actually want to bring in operators, because who are you going to hire? Who are you going to build the company with when you look to expand beyond the founding team? It's people who have done it before. And so, but the networks of these VCs and founders who are tweeting to each other, putting each other on lists, going to all these happy hours, was not the network that we used to hang out in, the enterprise operators. And so I thought, hey, they know that they need us. Our networks don't typically naturally intersect. If I could bring in a bunch of really awesome operators who had built and scaled up companies like Zoom and Stripe and Salesforce and Slack and PagerDuty, that we could essentially invest in any company we wanted, because the VCs and founders would know that we would bring this expertise. And so as a result, put together Operator Collective, which is a venture fund that has 150 operator LPs. LPs are investors in the fund. 90% are women, 40% are people of color, but first and foremost, they have built and scaled up these companies. And there's a lot of ulterior motives we had, which is when you can start to diversify the investor base from the top down, you can also influence these companies from the ground up. And so instead of waiting until a company's 100 people, 500 people, 5,000 people to start diversifying, you can start at an early stage. And then my other ulterior motive is that of these amazing operators who had built and scaled up all of these admired companies, who had all these skill sets, 70% of them had never invested in venture before. Yeah. So we're being left out. And so the idea here was, can we expand wealth creation and bring together networks of people that don't typically intersect and have them intersect, so that we're not creating separate parallel ecosystems, but one where there's not forced diversity, but natural diversity.
Yeah, that's a really great story, great mission. And the customers that you highlighted, Zoom, Stripe, we're very fortunate to get a chance to work with all those companies. Geraldo, I'd like to maybe piggyback off of what Malin just highlighted. You are the co-founder and co-CEO for VTEX. By the way, they just launched their IPO, so congratulations on that. That's huge. I really appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about VTEX. Latin America is a huge geography for Amazon and AWS. Tell us a little bit about VTEX.
So this is an entrepreneurship journey that started 21 years ago. And it's always about making a difference. First, always making a difference to our customers, right? Our customers are manufacturing brands and retailers that they need to be relevant to their consumers. And there's so much for them to learn. There's so many differentiators that they need to create. And we enable them to build only what matters to them. We abstract all the complexity around them. And this is since the beginning. We serve enterprise companies to go digital. And we're very strict on only letting them doing what they are different and experts. Mm-hmm. But this is not all about it. This is us also building a company from Latin America that is a global company, a global software company. And this is what this conference about. And I'm very proud of what we're doing. There's a lot of people at VTEX that are very proud on building a software company from Latam. And it's not only about people that come from Latam, but there's people all over the world, including you. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. That are very excited in creating these new opportunities for the developing and emerging markets. So this is where I think we're making the big difference. And I guess we're creating some difference here.
Have you found that over the last 20 months, you're in an emerging market, there's been a lot of change. What's been your biggest surprise as an executive, a CEO, and how to navigate through the last 20 months there at VTEX? What have you had to change?
This last months that we're living, these last years, this pandemic is all over, and all of a sudden the horizon for us gets foggy, and we have no future to see it, to pursue. This was in everyone's company, I guess, and all of a sudden we were in the same spot. But in our case, we saw a future for ourselves that put us together in the goal of digitalizing the world and accelerating the digitalization of the world. And having a future in front of us creates a big difference for us as a group, us as a community, us as an ecosystem. And we've been pursuing this future since then, this change for the world to be a digital world. And yeah, that's the big deal that we are.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we hear from our customers and partners a lot, if you're in an organization today, you're leading, the conversation of workplace strategy and workforce initiatives, they almost go synonymous. If you're a leader today, you almost can't talk about that. So I guess my next question is really for anyone. How have you had to adapt to workplace strategies and your workforce for where we are today? Companies are needing help doing this. How are you actually doing it? And Malin, I might just quickly start with you. How are you doing it?
Sure. One of the ways, and I'll back up a little bit, because one of the ways that we got these investors to invest is we had to, one of the reasons that women and people of color were not investing in ventures because it wasn't accessible, right? A lot of us, because you tend to know people like you, a lot of us operators were over 40, had kids at home, trying to juggle everything, and so the last thing we wanted to do was go to a happy hour at 5 p.m. to go meet a bunch of founders, potentially. And so what I wanted to do was build something that was so compelling that the venture world would come to us and to do it on our terms. And when you can do that, then you unlock a whole group of highly talented individuals that can't participate in sort of the typical traditional structure of, in this case, venture. And I think in some ways the pandemic has accelerated this with respect to just corporate, just workforce, which is for so many years we have been having to conform to this structure of, okay, you go into the office, you can meet 5 days a week. It's incredibly hard when you're a parent, when you're trying to juggle everything else. And I think that with the pandemic, my team has always been a remote team, and we work, incredibly hard, but we also work off hours, which is that people drop off their kids in the morning, and they pick up, and they do this. And so I'm actually incredibly, optimistic that there's some permanent change here, which is that the corporate world can now adapt more toward individuals who maybe cannot manage as well in sort of the traditional corporate structure.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of the unknown, particularly around innovation, that can likely happen. Greg, I know you get an opportunity to see a lot of golf courses. I'd love to spend my day out at the golf course a lot. But any comments from you just in terms of how you've had to adjust in workforce strategy?
I mean, it's a new day, right? I mean, I'm a conservative. I'm used to the 5 day a week, 6 days a week where, you came into the office and that's what you did. But I agree, to some point what you said, Malin, about, you have to change and you have to be flexible. But I would say, though, that I do think that, look at all of you, right? I mean, how would this be virtually as compared to us basically being together, for the first time, I guess, now in 20 months or so since you had your last conference. I think the key things that you get by coming into the office and working in person. If you're a young person, if you're a coordinator or a manager, you're not developing at home on a Teams call or on a Zoom call, because what happens is the director or the vice president, they're not taking that time, with you. They're doing workarounds and they're doing the job themselves. Culture within a company, if you have 100 or in our situation, we have, 800, you're not developing that culture, I don't believe, through the Zoom aspect of it. And I think if you're a younger person working in an environment, I think your ability to move throughout your career is somewhat hampered without having that interaction with those vice presidents, senior vice presidents, CEOs as part of it. Now, having said that, I think there is a new normal, and I think it's a combination of some of the in-office environment and then some of the remote, because I think that's the way it is and that's how we're working. And again, Not saying that the Zoom life is not productive. I mean, to some degree, it's unproductive, right? Do you ever shut it off? I mean, right? We never shut it off. Versus, you know, coming to the office and leaving. So, but yeah, things have changed. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we have a new normal. I think we're constantly, you know, here working with our customers, thinking about how to drive continuous engagement with them, with partners, with employees. And I don't think we're really, you know, going back. I think we're figuring out, you know, how to operate. And as part of that operation, it also has allowed us to touch different personas of our customers. And one of the new roles that we've been in this digital economy over the last 20 months, one of the new roles that we've started to have more interaction with, Ukanwa, this is for you, is really the intersection of technology, users, customers, and the business. Now, you don't know this, but you've been living in my house for the last 20 months as my son has been binge watching all sorts of shows, and I'm pretty addicted to Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan series, by the way. Tell us a little bit about your role as a chief marketing officer, and how do you see technology in general shaping the impact that you can have on businesses and organizations today?
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think it's interesting as technology becomes a more and more important part of our lives. The role of the chief marketing officer has actually been more elevated, because when you think about a lot of technology companies, especially for consumer-facing platforms, when you step away from all of it, at the end of the day, it's like, how big is your community? Is that community growing? Is that community retreating? Like, what's the size of that community? And the C level that does that is the chief marketing officer, because you're doing the acquisition, the retention, the loyalty. And you're also making sure that that experience across that entire customer journey is delivering on what the customer expects. So you're starting with the customer, making sure that their needs are being heard, even upstream in the development cycle. So we're having conversations with engineers way earlier than we used to say, no, we now know so much about what their actual behavior is. How can we design for that, knowing the people that we want to attract to the platform? And when you have one like us, where we have over 200 million Prime members in 240 countries around the world, there's a lot of diversity in what that customer is looking for from us in different countries around the world. And how do we make sure that when we're designing for that? When we're creating content, working with our studios to say, you know what, like, how do we make sure that the content that we're creating is for our global customer on a human level, but is also for our local customer on a very nuanced level? And there's a lot of thinking and intention that goes behind that. And then making sure that when we launch it, that we are leveraging technology and automation to reach as many people as we can very quickly all around the world to drive that acquisition funnel. So yeah, I would say it's hard to be successful as a technology company today if you're not starting with that customer base, if you're not starting with your subscriber base and making sure that through that entire journey, from acquisition to retaining them to making sure that they're loyal and advocating for you to other members, that the chief marketing officer is not a key part of that conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up the same question I had for Geraldo. Given that context, how have you had to evolve as a leader over the last 20 months? Do you do things differently, based on customer feedback?
As we were talking about, this pandemic accelerated the digital transformation, and we've been working on this for 21 years, but I guess that this is day one, that this will be 40 years ahead of us.
Always day one.
Exactly, always day one, and the good event to talk about day one, right? And so this was the trigger for us to actually nurture the talent, the diversified talent in our region, for us to give the fuel for our decades of growth, not our decades of growth only, but the digital transformation growth that will happen. And we're doing a lot of things to create talent, to pull the attention of young people to the industry that we are working at, to create opportunities for underrepresented people to join our industry and join our company, There's a lot of things going on right now. One example that I like to give a lot is, like, you know that most of our software engineers, they come from Brazil, where we were born, and there's more than 50% of the population of our country that are black people. And they are only present, only 10% of them in the best schools of Brazil. So there's so many Einsteins that are left behind in our country, and we are doing our part to discover them and to enable them to become what they were born to become. And so we are doing these scholarship programs for underrepresented people in Brazil. And I do believe that this will unlock our growth for decades. And we started during the pandemic.
Unlocking Einsteins. I'm going to have to borrow that in our go forward. And then Ukonwa, just to close out with you, anything else that you've sort of changed based on context? What are you doing differently?
First of all, it's been really great to see how much people have turned to. A lot of people were already streaming, but the pandemic obviously really accelerated that for a lot of customers. So for a lot of us in the streaming space, we saw significant growth in our acquisition of customers, and we saw significant growth in hours too. The last public information that we shared in April was a 70% increase in hours of people streaming year over year. And so for us, it's really making sure that we have the experience that they're expecting when they come on, and we're making it a lot easier and simpler for them to come into the family and for them to stay a part of the family. And then also borrowing from our Amazon roots, where we're the everything store, we also want to be a place where everybody feels welcome. And we know that the content space hasn't always been that, right? So how do we make sure that we have content that appeals to the diversity of the communities that we serve? And that hasn't always been the case in the industry that we've been in, but we've actually seen that that's a really key unlock for acquisition growth. Because if you're going to bring somebody into your fold, if you're going to bring in new customers, they want to know if you're going to program for them. They want to know if you have a pipeline, a slate of content that's going to appeal to them. And so when we launch shows that appeal to those communities, whether it's in local markets, seeing the significant growth that we're experiencing in international markets, really increasing the local originals that we're launching there and seeing the impact that that's having in the US as an example, making sure that we're not only programming for the general population, but looking at Black audiences and Latino audiences and making sure that we are programming for all the different groups within our customer base. We've seen that be completely linked to our acquisition growth. We've seen a very, very direct link between the programming that we have and the customers that we're able to bring in. And so it's a business imperative, really, not just as a good thing to do, as a good thing for the world, but really if we're going to diversify our customer base and we're going to increase the number of people that are part of Amazon Prime Video, we have to have content and programming. We have to have team members that understand the customers that we're trying to reach so that they can build campaigns that bring them in. And we've seen a significant impact as a result of that.
Yeah.
I like your app. It's nice and easy when I go to it. Everything pops up. Not all of them are.
There you go.
That expansion of community sounds like great opportunity for scale. And later today we have a number of leadership sessions where we talk about how we can scale media capabilities and content, and how to power that through technology, which I think is a great intersection. I want to come back to you quickly, Malin, because I do think in this state right now, in the state of the last 20 months, there is a substantial role that I believe startups and enterprises play in our go forward. Talk me through what you hear from some of the companies that you're fortunate to get a chance to work with. What do you think the role is for startups and for early stage and late stage startups here over the next several years?
Yeah, so Operator Collective primarily invests in enterprise and B2B software. Mm-hmm. And so the digital transformation, right, ripping the Band-Aid off when everyone had to go online, has been good for adoption there. And so a lot of what we look at is productivity, right? How do you How do you do things better? How do you move off from spreadsheets? How do you do things? But there are a couple of companies that I'll call out that have helped with respect to, right, today, when I joined my venture-backed startup, 11, 12 years ago, diversity was not top of mind, right? We were sort of aware of it, but not. But now I think people recognize that you have to appeal to a diverse audience, which means you also have to have people within the organization that don't just look like the founders and the investors who in the early days were a very homogenous group. And so there are a couple of companies that in our portfolio. One is called Textio, which actually started with so it all starts also with your language and how you use your language. And so it started with like job listings to make them more inclusive, to appeal to a broader audience. Because there were things that they have a lot of studies behind it, which is like if you use the word, we want ninjas and rock stars, it turns out that only applies to a certain, is only appealing to a certain group of people. They've expanded their products now to be essentially like communications across your brand, across your own performance reviews, across feedback, your own communications. And it's almost like almost like a personal DEI coach who gives you these like nice little prompts. And then another one is something called Syndio, which is pay equity, right? How can you make sure that you're paying people equally? And so I think that technology can play a great role, not only in how do you access, remotely, but also how do you transform your organization? How do you build culture when you're more remote than you were before? And I completely agree. There's got to be some hybrid. I think it's a little bit hard to be completely remote, but there is technology that can help us get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. One of the quotes that I need to read this quote. One of the quotes that I recently read in the Harvard Business Review, and it just talks about leadership change. And the quote goes, "Leaders must shift from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all mindset when dealing with sort of uncertainty and where we are." I'm going to ask this for everyone, really. What's been your biggest change or new learning, your new normal as a leader? Being resilient, being courageous. What's been sort of the thing that you've had to adjust? And I can tell you for myself, we introduced a new leadership principle at AWS called Strive to be Earth's Best Employer. And I think, in that leadership principle, it talks about the importance of leading in areas like empathy. And so the people agenda is extremely important. What would be an example for you, Greg, on sort of your new normal as a leader, given where we are, and as a CEO?
I think you're listening to your people a lot more, based on where we are really with the pandemic. Issues now, childcare issues right now are huge for young families. And there's a tremendous amount of turnover going on in business right now. It is an employees market out there, and you have to be flexible. And I gave you the ideal situation is you're in the office, 2-3 days a week, and you're working at home. But sometimes that doesn't fit, with everybody. And then you've got health concerns, that you have to be sensitive to. So, I kind of have a thought, but then when you talk to your team, you're going to have to be flexible in changing your thought, because I think you really have to be flexible and adaptable, in today's working environment, really, I think, to lead an organization. And I think it's just going to continue like that for a while. We're not going to flip the switch here, I don't think, anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Ekonwa, what about for you? What's your new normal?
Yeah, I think it's really critical for innovation, for me, the belief that a great idea can come from anywhere. And I think the pandemic really accelerated that for us. And it really accelerated that for me, because when you think about whether it's a Zoom screen or a Chime screen or Teams screen, whatever platform you use, regardless of where you are in the organization, you have the same rectangle. And the voices of those that are lower in the organization have actually elevated in the last year, 2 years. And I think we've been better for it. It's been really great to just have everybody have the same square, or the same rectangle, and the same voice. And so if you really believe then that a great idea can come from anywhere, having a platform that allows your entire employee base to contribute to the innovation process, to contribute to the leadership process, to contribute to the engagement process, I think it's made our work better. I think it's made our products better. I think it's made our customer experiences better because they're closer to the people that we're trying to reach every day. So that's been a big learning for us. And so as we have started kind of transitioning back to being in the office, how do we not lose that, right? How do we make sure that we continue to build a culture where we are listening to every voice and it's equitable across the board, and we're not bringing in all these young people with all these great ideas, but not hearing from them, because then what's the point, right? And that all those voices are actually going into developing things that are better for our customers every day. That's been a big learning for me. It's been a big learning for us, and I hope that it continues to be a part of who we become as we grow.
Yeah. And Geraldo, what about for you? You're one of our few co-CEOs who's pretty technical and can get on the whiteboard with me on relational, non-relational SQL. So that's kind of interesting. What's been your sort of new normal?
The pandemic with this, working from home and if you don't know what's working, what's not. I think the opportunity here is to be whole every time and everywhere. It's about, we get our minds, like we are used to compartmentalize. This is work, this is home, this is profit, this is non-profit, this is good, this is for profit, this is for the good of society. No, we should have a life, we should work in a company, we should build a company, and we should be whole all the time. We're here to create profit and to benefit the society. That we were talking about this at the same time. This is not a balance. This is our lives. Just as the work from home and not work from home. Is this work or this is life? It's this like, I'm not living right now, I'm working. No, there's nothing like this. Like, we are learning to be whole, to be one person everywhere. It's not, that's the main takeaway, that's the main message. And that's, in my view, what will create the remote culture in a company. Like, we're all going to the same direction. It's not about, we're not going to the same direction here when we are at the office. Yeah. This is our lives that are going to the same direction.
I think it's great to hear, I think it's great to hear that from a CEO and co-founder in Down, by the way.
I'm motivated by that. That's why I'm working.
Yeah. I want to just, and Malin, did you have anything that you'd like to add just on your new normal?
No, I think they said it all.
Okay. I want to shift gears because we are at reInvent, and this is our largest learning conference, mostly a learning conference. And also on the people agenda globally is how folks are thinking about expanding their skills, technical skills. There are a variety of sessions later today also. Get your certifications if you're here this week. I want to talk about your role as senior leaders. And what we're experiencing is more of our customer executives, becoming more technical as part of this digital transformation. So Geraldo, I'm gonna pick on you to start perhaps, because you're a CEO, you're a co-founder. VTEX has had a lot of great success. You tend to remain into the transformation details of technology. Why?
This is, I do believe there's future for me. There's a whole different world that I see if I and the team and the community around me work very hard. And I guess this is what makes us all move, right? Seeing a bright future ahead as if we work hard toward that future. And I see us like accelerating enterprises being relevant to consumer. I see us enabling that by creating these enormous talent pools in our regions. There are diverse people. There are people that the Einsteins that we unlocked, and in 10 years from now, there will be people that would be maybe a bus driver, but their gift is to being the best software engineer in the world. And they will be there working with us and transforming the society around us. That's I do believe is the transformation that we are living right now, and as it is day one for all of us.
Every day is day one. If you don't remember anything else, every day is day one. We get a lot of feedback that's one part of the equation for skills. The other is, people really want, and Greg mentioned this earlier, life skills. Greg, talk a little bit about how you foster and promote some of these life skills and other, sort of key commitments there at First Tee, and why is that important for you all to focus on it?
Well, again, to me, the key really is developing young people. I mean, and several of the people in the crowd right now maybe have come through our program, and ultimately over the next 25 years, they're going to fill up this room, and those individual skills that I think you develop and you learn become key for you to succeed academically, socially, and in business, I think, as part of it. And I think the key thing for us is really how it transitions into the classroom. I mean, a couple things that we try and focus on is, 98% of the kids that come through our program graduate from high school. Many of us in the room might not think that's a big deal, but you got some communities that less than 50% of the kids that are graduating from high school, which is really appalling. 86% of them then go on to either four-year college, military, or some post-secondary education, trade school as part of it. And I think those are critical things in our society for us to continue to promote. And as we've all talked about, pressures that everyone's under right now in a working environment, but young people today, again, I mean, some kids went literally a year without being in a classroom environment, and it was pretty much a lost year. And I think time will tell how that affects the job market and how these roles are effectively coming out. But the other thing I think is key, and Malin talked a little bit about it, is appreciating diversity and having at least in our world, individuals that look more like the kids that are there. We're proud of the fact that 52% of the kids that come through our program are non-Caucasian, and 39% of them are gender diverse. And I think those are important numbers. And again, golf is kind of the hook that we bring the kids in, but it's really teaching those soft or hard skills I mentioned earlier, and then how it transitions into the classroom and then in life for all of them.
Yeah, it's really great, and I'll encourage everyone to definitely take a look at. I think those skills become extremely handy. They're very relevant now. Muscle memories that many of us have not had the opportunity to really flex until you get hit with the pandemic, and everyone goes into learning mode. We're all figuring out the new blueprints. We're all figuring out how to be better leaders, how to ensure that the people agenda is top of mind and it's at the forefront. And so I just, I commend you and the First Tee team for kind of creating the space to be able to do that. Malin, you talked about the great sort of direction of Operator Collective. I was just curious, when you were building out the company, who were some of your first picks for the dream team? How'd you think about who? Yeah. Any particular skills like perseverance or other that you were looking for?
So having built and scaled up a number of startups, I know how hard it is, right? It's very, very, very hard. And so especially when you've not done it before. And so what I wanted to do with the Operator Collective LP base was, who are the people who had built and scaled up these companies, so then when questions come up, you can learn from them. Mm-hmm. And so actually I was at a conference and I'd been thinking about this idea. I'm like, God, I need to do this. I want to do this. And everyone's like, how are you possibly going to raise a venture fund? You were a patent attorney, right? And so I was sitting next to a mutual friend actually who introduced us. Her name's Erica Schultz. She's the president of Confluent. And she was very prototypical of this, which is that she had built up the revenue at New Relic from the ground up to, it was primarily an SMB business. She built it up into the enterprise, business that it is today, up to 500 million. And so I was sitting next to her, and I was like, hey, I have this idea. And she's like, well, I was like, you want to hear it? And she said, well, yeah, let me hear it. And so I pitched her on this idea, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm totally in. And I said, because I was into like, women need to be doing money generating business with each other. So I said, well, how much? And she put down a number that was a real number. And from there, Operator Collective was born. And so there was a few things that were there, which was that Erica was an incredibly successful operator, but not necessarily an everyday name, which is typical of our. She was, juggling a full-time job and was raising 2 kids at home, so any free time was not going to go figure out what companies to invest in, but to basically crush it in her day job and then make sure she's crushing it at home as well. And and also, given her background, Operator Collective was her first investment in venture, which is so you have these ultra talented people who don't have access because it doesn't quite fit into the way you want to prioritize your life. And so what I joke with Erica too is like, if she had said, I'm not so into it, like Operator Collective may not exist today.
That's a great story. That's a great story. Do you think there's change happening across Silicon Valley, just perspective?
Yeah, I think absolutely there is, which is when you can unlock and provide access and education. Because certainly, so while Erica might have made her first commitment to invest in Operator Collective, she has gone on to invest. I mean, I'm not going to take credit for it because she probably would have done it anyway. But she has gone on to invest in a number of companies, and that's what we've seen, which is when you can get that first part of access, that part of education, back to the learning, then it's like, oh, you know what? I can do this, right? Even if I'm not an outsider or I don't feel like I'm an insider, that I can do this, and I have a lot of skills to add to the table. So we've seen, like I mentioned, we invest in enterprise and B2B, and actually a number of our companies are part of the AWS ecosystem, which is how do you deal with like usage-based billing, right? How do you deal with the AI functions? So thank you for all that you're doing there to enable a whole generation of startups. But so when we invest, we're not an impact investor. We're not saying we only invest in women and people of color. We invest in great startups that are going to hopefully make a ton of money and expand wealth creation to a group of people who haven't had the opportunity to engage before. And but there is a lens that we add, which is, is this going to be an ultra successful company? Do these founders have what it takes to build up this company? And then we also ask the question, would we refer our friends to work here? Because that's what we do. And then we bring our naturally diverse networks into that. We also ask the question, would we want our kids to work here someday? Because like you said, it's not about this is work and this is life. Like, why do we want these? We want to support these companies who are ultra successful, but also treat their employees well, who reflect what the products should bring, to the general population. And so that's what we look at. And so we are seeing already that the impact of Operator Collective is that more women and people of color who hadn't invested before are now investing. People have joined as early employees to these startups, expanding wealth creation that way. They've joined as board members. They've joined as advisors. And so one of my ulterior motives, again, is to how do you diversify the tech industry from the ground up as opposed to waiting until they're big? Because I know from firsthand experience, even at 65, it's hard. It's hard to start to shift the culture at that point.
That's right. It's really great points. You hit on a number of things. Community. I want to go back to something Greg said about the importance of just thinking about mentorship, likely some level of sponsorship to even be able to have that access. Mentorship is something that comes up frequently across organizations and company as a part of that people agenda. And I think the expectations that people are having on us as leaders is shifting. So I'm just curious. You all have very fascinating backgrounds. Who are some of the folks that mentor you? And Ukano, I'll start with you. We want to know.
That's awesome. Thanks for starting with me. It's interesting. I have a personal board of directors, actually.
Okay.
And it's something that I started years ago, and it's a very diverse group of people. It has folks like my dad, and who learned very early on he built his own business. He used to be a pilot, and then one day decided he wanted to start his own airline, which is just like crazy. And he was able to convince a lot of people to invest, and he did start his own airline. So it's like he's gutsy, and he's taken a lot of risks in his life, and I really appreciate him for that. It has folks like my best friend that I've known for 30 years. I graduated high school, 30 years ago. It's crazy to think about it. And she knows me really well. And so she gets to the humanity of things. And she can go, why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. I've known you for 30 years. You don't care about that. You don't really care about that. And it just helps you stay human, stay humble. It has folks like, that I've worked with in the past that I just really admire, who have run companies and have done a lot of incredible things. It has folks like pastors who make sure that I never forget my faith, and that's like the bigger picture in my life, and making sure that I never lose sight of that. So I think that's really important. There are people that I admire for what they have accomplished in business, but there are a lot of people that I really admire because of their humanity. There are a lot of people that I really admire because of their faith and their resilience through whatever it is that comes at them. And I think that at the end of the day helps you to be a better leader, because like you said, there's no work and life. Like, you're a human being connecting with other human beings to impact other human beings. So when you kind of bring it down to that level, what I see as mentorship is potentially a little bit different.
Yeah. And just to stay on that, do you believe that leaders have a responsibility to help cultivate and foster things like perseverance and resilience across their organizations?
For sure. I think not only do we have the responsibility to cultivate that, but we have the responsibility to model that. Because I think a lot of times, like in the last 20 months or 2 years, when a lot of people wanted to give up, sometimes they would look up to us, and the energy that we were bringing into the passion that we were bringing in, the energy that we were bringing in, and then creating a safe space for them to say, I'm not okay. I'm really tired. I'm exhausted. I need a break. Or I'm gung-ho, I can do this, like I can keep going. But creating a space that allows people to do their best work really means they need to tap into who they are. I personally do not believe that you can be the best at what you do if you are not who you are. I think your gifts are intricately linked into who you are. I believe when you were put on this earth, you came with the manual of what you would be. You're discovering it as you go, but it's all in there, and it's all about discovery and pushing that. So us as leaders, creating an environment that allows people to explore different parts of who they are, allows people to try things and fail, and don't have gross repercussions for them failing so that they can learn. When we do that, and we do that well, I think we get the best from people. Because they get to try things they've never tried before. And they know that if they fail, so what? The reality for my team, for our teams, is they're right more times than they're wrong. And so I'm willing to risk the 5 or 10% that they'll be wrong for the 90% that they'll be right. And if I create an environment that allows them to push themselves harder than they've ever pushed before, or to take a break when they desperately need one, that's what I believe really unlocks innovation and really allows us to deliver for our customers who, by the way, are going through a lot of the same things. We're not the same humans we were 2 years ago. And so for us to really understand our audiences and our customers, we have to have a great level of empathy for where they are, who they are, the choices that they're making. And if we understand that at a human level, we can serve them at a human level.
Very well said. I'm not sure I have anything to add. Greg, what about for you? Your mentor list, and then
my situation was probably a little different. I didn't really grow up with any mentors in my life. Lost my father when I was young. My mother didn't really have the skill set. And maybe that's how I migrated towards, the role that I have now, because I think, probably my mentor right now for the last 37 years has been my wife. She's been she always says, biggest fan, biggest critic, right? So you always can know where you stand. But, I think probably that guidance has helped me. And obviously, as I became an adult, you know, I had board members and, you know, people that I dealt with that I became friends with. But I can't emphasize to you right now the importance of mentoring, you know. So find somebody, especially a young person, you know, in order to do it. Our college scholarship program, I love your idea of finding Einstein, which is brilliant. I might steal that equally as well. We pair each one of our kids with a mentor because more than half of them are first-generation scholars, and they really don't have someone helping them. But I would encourage all of you to, you know, give thought to that, because really being a mentor for a young person, I mean, it's a life-changing experience.
We appreciate that. And then you're creating future game changers, as we like.
Yeah, that's our tagline, right? It's maybe used by a lot of others, but that's what our goal is to create future game changers. And I agree with what you're saying about, you know, creating that safe environment, and whether it's for a young person or it's for your work environment. I think that's key as leaders. You know, we all have to try and do that in order to get the most out of our team.
That's right. Malin, what about for you? And then I'll close on Geraldo.
Yeah, like I said, I came from a very strange background that should have never ended up doing what I was doing. And I also, you know, I came from immigrant parents who still really don't speak much English and don't quite know how to navigate the Western world as easily as I think most. And what I've been fortunate is to have a lot of people along the way who, for some reason or another, and I still don't really understand why, it's like, I believe in you, right? The difference when someone says, I believe in you and you can do this, makes a world of difference. And then, as you said, it's like, and then creating a safe space, right? Psychological safety to fail. But when they believe that you can do something, then in some ways it's also confirmation bias on their part and the world around you. So part of, I think, mentorship is also sponsorship, to say, okay, we're not just gonna mentor you, which is obviously a key part of it, but also we're gonna sponsor you to say, this, you know, Francesca is, you know, the most amazing blah, 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 and when they make intros for you. So a couple of mine are Magdalena Yacil and Dan Scheinman, who are both involved in the fund and were people I've known for a while. And you also the first investor in Salesforce and the first investor in Zoom. And so not only are they sort of a personal board of directors of sorts, but also incredibly helpful professionally, as well as we're making investments in the fund.
Love it. Geraldo, quick minute for you.
You know, I thought it was so interesting because all of us here, there's unusual suspects for mentors, right? And that's my case. I started this company in Latin America when there was no ecosystem around us for tech, and you know, my mentors, they are, you know, my father for the entrepreneurship skills, for the grit, and for the perseverance. My mother for the always learning pace, always be open to new learnings and invest in education. And my co-founder, Mariano, for the boldness. And so that's, you know, like not usual people to be mentored, but yeah, they helped a lot.
Well, clearly, all of your mentors have done an amazing job. This has been so fascinating. You've done a lot. You are changing the world. We thank you for that. You're leading through uncertainty with so much resilience, grit, and courage. Ladies and gentlemen, please give the panelists a round of applause. Thank you, and have a wonderful AWS reInvent.